It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. No way this is going on. My name is Grizzly Chris. That's who I go by. I do a lot of interviews and investigations. I have a law enforcement background. I retired under LEOSA, a Law Enforcement Safety Officer Act, as a captain detective. So I got about 14 and a half years experience before I went to the civilian side. I've been into the paranormal field since I was a little child and growing up. It seems like everybody on my mom's side of the family has always came back and said hello, some way of some sort of fashion. So that's been interesting. And that has also led me into the cryptid world when it comes to Bigfoot and Sasquatch and so forth. So that has been an interesting journey. So I've been on that endeavor for many years and exploring that, investigating that in that realm. Very interesting. They do exist. I've actually seen them. Very interesting. So, what else would you like to know?
Well, I'd like to know, how did your paranormal research turn over into cryptid research?
So, it all started back when I was probably around 13 or 14. My grandfather passed away, and we was down at the lake, and we had this big deck. And to get on the deck, you had to open up this aluminum door, those old types of aluminum doors, and it has silver bells on it. And you know how decks are, they warp over the years and so forth. So when you open the door, it would drag and the bells would go off. Well, approximately 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I was thirsty and I had to get up, get me something to drink. And I was like, there's somebody on the deck. And I looked and peeked through the blinds and I was like, the curtains. And I'm like, there is somebody on the deck. And the person took a puff of a cigarette and I was like, oh, that's my grandfather, which, a year prior, he already passed away. So, of course, I try to go wake up my grandmother. And I don't know why it is, but why is it when you try to wake somebody up, you cannot wake them up, right? So I tried and tried and tried. And finally she got up. I'm like, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, Grandpa's out on the deck and he's smoking a cigarette. She's like, whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm telling you the truth. Come out, look. Well, she opened the curtains and looked, and there's nobody out there. So we went out on the deck, and lo and behold, there was cigarette smoke. And she's like, are you smoking? I'm like, no, it's not me. I was like, I'm telling you, he was out there. And so she confessed that, there was some activity going on around her house ever since he passed and so forth. And my mom, she's expressed some activity around the house. And, things were not adding up, but, things being moved, things being, knocked off the wall, small things we didn't think nothing about at the time. But as I got older, and more family members passed away, it seemed like everybody on my mom's side of the family's always come back and said hello or played tricks. Because my grandfather was a trickster. So at that time, we always started having these paranormal shows coming out where they were, investigating ghosts and ghost hunters and so many different shows coming down the market. And he had all these Bigfoot shows coming out. So the paranormal turned into the Bigfoot, and I wanted to learn more, and it kind of snowballed a lot. And I was like, well, do they exist? I know the afterlife, the spirit realm, I know that exists. I've seen spirits and apparitions, I've seen shadows and so forth. So, is this true? And I wanted to learn more. So I went on that journey, read books, and every time there was a TV show that was on, I was right there in front of the TV watching it. And I was like, no, is this really true? Is this person fabricating this? But as I got older, and got onto the police department and so forth, you start meeting credible people, especially working on the county side, in hearing, people with high ranking titles in the community, doctors, attorneys, other law enforcement officers, and so forth. And you're like, wow, Everybody cannot be fabricating something up. And don't get me wrong, ladies and gentlemen, I know there's little Johnny that runs around in an ape suit, that causing havoc, on people and they're hoaxers and fakesters. Yeah, I mean, does that happen? Absolutely. But growing up hunting, there was a lot of things that I didn't realize now that there were signs of these creatures that actually existed that walks amongst the on this earth. What we call, tree structures or any formations that they leave, the tree bends and so forth. Back then, when I went hunting by myself or with my father, we would see stuff like that, but I would never think nothing about it because nobody told us that's what it was, right? Or that's what we thought it was. We didn't put two and two together. And after, all these shows were coming out and people were sharing their encounters, because back then, it was a taboo talking about Bigfoot or the paranormal world because people thought, oh my gosh, something's wrong with him or her. They're a little bit crazy or like we or myself from a small town, people will make fun of you and crucify you. So you didn't, or people would not talk about their encounters or their experiences or what they saw in the woods when they went hunting or on their walks and trails and bicycle rides and so forth. So none of that really came out until the past 10 to 12 years. I think a lot of people accredited that to not only the TV shows, but also to Facebook groups that are out there to where people can come out and say, hey, you know, I read Linda's story, and you know what? That is something that resonates with me because I didn't know that I had something that happened similar to me, whether it was objects being thrown at me or I've seen things in the woods where it comes to bends in trees and how trees are stacks and X's and crosses that are formed, and we're talking stuff, or trees that a human person, a man, a grown man or two, full size, whether they're in good shape or not, could barely even move a tree. And not only that, but seeing things such as trees being stuck upside down in the ground with the roots sticking up. I don't know if you ever witnessed that or encountered that yourself, but how can you explain stuff like that, right? So over the years, taking all that experience and seeing what I've seen, I know that there are creatures that walk this earth that should not exist, right? Because man has told us before, and scientists, what to believe in and what not to believe in, and what does and does not exist. So, how can you take somebody else's encounter or story and say that no, they're not telling the truth? When I look at the totality of everything, and that's one of the law enforcement jargons, is the totality means everything as a whole. Yeah, we do have those people that fabricate evidence, unfortunately, with AI and so forth, and in the technology we have. It's not like it was years ago. We can look at a photograph or picture and we can go, well, look here, everything's digitalized. We can see where it's cut and copied and pasted in and so forth. Now it's really hard. So it's making it harder for everybody that's into the paranormal or the cryptid realm is with their video or photographic evidence, unless you're very well known or got a good reputation, because now it's kind of being tossed out the window. And that's really sad because I come across a lot of videos and pictures of people that are credible. And if I didn't know that this person that has been doing this research for 15 years and showing me this video of alleged Bigfoot cloaking and disappearing like Predator off a movie, I would say it was fabricated and fake. It has changed a lot of my perspective on this elude creature or being. Now, if you'd have told me or asked me 15, 20 years ago, what do I think about Sasquatch or Bigfoot? I would have said it was a primate. I would think it would kind of be more like an ape creature. Ron Moorhead, he is very well known into the Bigfoot world, which everybody knows. He's an admin of a couple of my Facebook groups, and he came out with Quantum Bigfoot book beginning of this year. And him and I had a discussion about, Sasquatch and stuff, about the quantum mechanics and in the realm relating with Bigfoot. And Ron and I even discussed that if we talked about things like we did 15 or 20 years ago, people would laugh at us. Now, there are more to these creatures than what we are known to exist. They are very intelligent. For example, we have people across the nations that gift these creatures. And we're talking peanut butter jars about yay big, super size Walmart or whatever, a peanut butter jar, 6 a week, and they quit gifting. And next thing you know, they're causing hell and havoc to the neighbors in the area, beating on houses, throwing the peanut butter jars at the houses. And now the fish and wildlife people are getting involved, but they will never call them Bigfoot or Sasquatches. They call them bears. And I learned in the law enforcement community, they never will acknowledge the existence of the creatures of that term. They always call them bears. They don't want to cause mass panic or hysteria. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know bears do not screw on lids of peanut butter. So they have been tested to where they leave peanut butter jars out, and they actually put dates on the jar lids and on the bottom of the jars, and they will find them unscrewed and screwed back on. They will find the tinfoil removed off of the peanut butter jars as you unscrew a new can, right? Take off the lid. So we have people not only feeding these creatures, but also communicating with these creatures. There's been several people with Indian blood or Indian background or heritage has come forward and said, yes, we have relations with Sasquatch, and we talk to them in our native tongue. We had one on one of our recent shows was teaching us OCO, and that means hello, and Cherokee, allegedly. And he takes a group of people out on his property where these creatures exist, and he shows people how they live, and they use thermals, and everybody's like, well, how come every time you get a picture, it's always a blob squab, or it's always blurry and so forth. Well, two things I wanted to address with that. Okay, first, if you ever take a picture of a squirrel in a tree running or jumping from branch to branch, it's kind of hard to do. Now, secondly, your brain is not meant to understand a creature that you never saw before, right? So if you think that something does not exist, your brain is there to protect you and also your body. So there's a lot of times where people encounter these creatures or beings or Sasquatch, Littlefoot, Bigfoot, however you want to call them, and really messes with their brains, and they come down with PTSD. A lot of them really cannot fathom what they encounter. A lot of people don't even talk about it for many years. A lot of them loses their bowels in the woods, whether they're hunting or fishing. Unfortunately, because of their encounters, they never go back into the woods. They never go back hiking. They never go back hunting. They never go back fishing. And I have grown men before that I've interviewed and also spoken with that literally broken down live on my shows and in person, emotionally crying because of what they endured. And not only that, they feel bad because A, they didn't believe what other people have come forward and talked about their encounters experience. And they also would express how much they made fun of people and downgrade them and bully them in chat rooms or Facebook groups. And that's one thing, we cannot do. Yes, do I believe it's a flesh and blood creature? Absolutely. Do they bleed? Absolutely. Can they be killed? Absolutely. We have numerous encounters that are factual and incredible that people have came across and had to have bad experiences with these creatures and had to defend themselves and their children. And the government was involved. Native tribe members were involved. Fish and Wildlife was involved with other government agencies as well. So, does these encounters happen? Yes. Now, when we talk about Bigfoot and Sasquatch, when I first saw mine, it was unbelievable because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like, this is no way this is going on. And the person that I was with was like, oh, yeah, it's normal. I've got them living on my property. They've been here since I was 12 or 13. And, I gift them food and, I know where the watchers are. And ladies and gentlemen, the watchers are the ones that stay back from the family or clan, however you want to call it, or tribe. And they will, during the day, watch over them for safety and make sure nobody comes in and disturbs them. And I have encountered people and also other people, along with other people, that also have relationships with Bigfoot and Sasquatch in tribes up to 15 to 19 of these creatures on their property for many years. Talking to different tribal indigenous people, we have found out allegedly they can live up to 150 years each. So that's very interesting. Uh, the cloaking, we heard that they can do that for many years. Now, my question is to you, Linda. Now, this is not a trick question, right? This is not to disrespect anybody, but what color is a polar bear?
Well, I think a polar bear is white.
Well, actually, it is not. Actually, a polar bear is black. So, and this is where when somebody told me this years ago, I was like, oh, come on. And I had to fact check that. Now, a polar bear hair is like fiber optic. It actually absorbs the background or the surrounding, and that's why it reflects white in the yellowish tint color. So we have people that come forward with alleged Bigfoot hair and said when I put it underneath the microscope, the hair reflects the light and bends the light, or it absorbs the light. So we know in 2006, United States government says we can make a kitty cat and a goldfish disappear. And I actually put that in one of my Facebook groups, and now they're using that technology to shield tanks and ships on the ocean to camouflage them. What kind of technology is this? I don't know. It's out there on future weapons, which you can look up. Anybody can, or you can Google it, or you can go to one of my Facebook groups and look at the links and research. Now, we know that the government's 30 to 50 years in advance in technology from what we have as civilian wise. But when Barb Shute actually came forward and she had her video of a Bigfoot that actually cloaked itself during an outing with many people, we always hear that people see a flash of light. And she saw that and she's like, oh, what was that? And she had an iPod 4 taped to her walking stick. And this is back in 2014. And they had to go back and put it on a big monitor to figure out what it was they captured. Now, people from Hollywood tried to dissect this video, and they were like, A, it was not fabricated. Two, the device was not tampered with. The technology was not there. Three, when they slowed it down frame by frame, it looked like when people say they see a flash of light or a lightning bolt or a picture like a flash, we are now assuming or alleging that maybe that could be possibly a portal opening up and these creatures are coming out of. Because if you go back and watch her footage and they slowed it down, they have the creature coming out, but it was so fast you can see the hands of the Sasquatch grabbing the vegetation and pulling everything away as it is running. And it's very fast. And if you blink an eye, you miss it. And we actually played the video, I think 5 or 6 times on my shows, and also a national show I do once a week. And people are like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." And how many times have we heard people actually out in the woods saying, "I hear something, but I don't see it." Well, that's happened to me many times along with other people. Or you be out in the woods and you hear, and it sounds like an elephant running up towards you, and you hear, and you can feel the breath, but nothing's there in front of you. So, how can you explain that? Now, science cannot explain that. So, when we talk about quantum physics and quantum entanglement, that is very deep, and it's over a lot of people's head because, we always want to think flesh and blood and so forth. We know right now there's approximately 11 dimensions. Now, I do not dispute anybody's beliefs on what they want to stand on, what they believe, whether it's flesh and blood or it's a supernatural being. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. I know that they can disappear. I've seen footprints that walk out in the middle of the field and they just disappear. Now, how can you explain that? You have some people that say, well, Grizzly, I see lights, I see UFOs either before or after a Bigfoot encounter. So, does that discredit somebody? No, I don't think it does. I think we need to be open-minded about the subject and topic. I'm not saying that all these encounters that we are getting reported that everybody's wrong, because there's a lot of similarities. And if you look David Pilates at 411 and Ron Moorhead and a lot of other people that's been in this, cryptid realm for many, many years, they say if you take the ley lines of America and put them down and take out the alleged sightings of these creatures and put another layer on top of that map, and you take the cave systems and put another layer on top of that with the missing people on top of that, now you're starting to see a trend. And that's what I look for, right? Or trends in similarities. Now, if I talk to somebody from Tennessee and talk to somebody from Michigan and they don't know each other and they have similar encounters, how can you discredit that? Now, I know there are hoaxes, like I said earlier, that people do things out there to fool people. That actually happens, and we know that exists. We know people fabricate evidence when it comes to video. We know people fabricate evidence when it comes to pictures. We know people fabricate recordings when it comes to audio. So, with all this pollution out there, we or myself, our team or our investigators or our admins and moderators, we don't judge anybody because we were not there when you took the video, and I don't know. I didn't take the picture as well. So not being there and taking the video or picture, I'm not going to call somebody, well, you're full of doo-doo or you're a liar. I'm going to discredit you and make a fool out of you. No, because when people see that and people are saying, well, I'm not going to come forward and talk about my encounter because I seen how they treated Linda. Well, I'm not going to be embarrassed and treat it like that. Now, recently, the past, I would say 12 or 13 months, I had a lot of deathbed confessions to where people that work for the military would come and tell me their story about their encounters on military bases and off military bases. And we're talking not only in the United States, but we're talking UK, Britain, London, Scotland. Ireland. Yes, they have different names for them and so forth. We know that Bigfoot or Sasquatch, however you want to call them, they are different species of them. They're not just like one type. I think there's up to 14 or 17 different types of species. It's very interesting. I know people that I've seen on TV or researchers that have been out in the woods for 30 or 40 years and never had an encounter. But we also have people that are credible, Linda, and that would say, and I have, because especially in the paranormal realm, little audio recorders, right, that we use to catch EVPs, electronic voice phenomenons, trying to, deal with the paranormal realm and see what we can capture on audio. But how can you tell me that these people would hide these recorders on their property and these alleged creatures would pick them up and turn them off? I'm not saying drain the batteries. I'm saying turn the recorders off. Some of them you have to hold the button down to power off. Some of them you have to slide the lever and hold it to power it off. And there's been also encounters to where people would actually leave them out while they're camping on picnic tables and they would get confiscated. And right before they leave, after a couple of days, they would be found all stacked together in an area, be like, hey, don't forget, bye bye, and get your tape recorders or your audio or digital recorders on the way out. So I have a guy in Western Kentucky. He actually, I know this is going to sound hilarious, but he uses his gorilla tape and he uses a digital recorder. And next to the woods where he sees these creatures, and tape the recorder to it. And for hours, you would hear them throw rocks and objects at the sign trying to knock this recorder off. And you would hear ding, ding, donk, ding, ding, and big bangs trying to get this recorder knocked off the sign. We also know from people with indigenous backgrounds, Indian heritage, that they do know how to use fire. They do cook. I know that sounds weird. They have seen them use pots and pans to gather water. And my question is where do they get the pots and pans? Well, then we find out that people leave things and gift creatures or these creatures items. So it's very interesting. Now, when I first saw mine, it shocked me because it looked like a Chewbacca. And I knew it was a female, and the girl even confirmed it was a female because she knew it was because she has been around it. And this is not to sound, prejudiced in any way. It was just the shape of the body and the bottom half. It looked like a female, like Patty would, in the Patterson Gimlin film. And once she saw the phone, it went into the tree line and it did that one thing, peeking, back and forth behind a tree. And that's something that we always hear or see. And people that reports when they see these creatures, what they do is they're witness, right? And they're very curious. It's very interesting to also know that people that do gift them, you have to be careful because it's like feeding your neighborhood cat or dogs, right? Once you start, you cannot stop because they keep coming back. And we had one encounter, like I said earlier, where the guy got sick and he couldn't go out there in the woods for 4 weeks. And they actually gathered the peanut butter jars up and they went to the neighbor's house, banging on the house, throwing the jars at the house, tearing up the vinyl sidings and tearing up fences, objects on the property or on the garage or in the garage when the garage doors open. And they didn't know what to do. They called the police. The police were like, yeah, right, whatever. So they called the Fish and Wildlife, and how they found out who this guy was is they put trail cameras up and got pictures of his license plate and tracked him down. And I would love to be a fly on the wall during that conversation, because they were going to charge him with criminal trespassing, littering, baiting animals, and everything else. But once again, they would never say Sasquatch or Bigfoot. They'd always call it bear and or bears. But once again, I know people that gift these creatures apples, eggs. Now, when I say eggs, I'm not referring to store-bought eggs, because we found out that they do not like the bleached eggs that we get from the store. They like the natural eggs that come from the chickens on the farm. Also, the farmers, especially the ones that the grandkids that are my age, be like, yeah, my grandparents always told me I can go hunting on this side of the property, but never on this side, is because we have an agreement to where we don't bother them, they don't bother us. That's very interesting. And I hear this a lot lately, especially when the grandparents are passed, and the grandchildren or the sons or daughters come forward and like, yeah, they've always been around our farm. We had to tell them to quit, stop taking our poultry or chickens or hogs and so forth. They do understand, it seems like, our English language. Uh, they are very good with mimicking different animals. We have one of my admins on several of my groups, and she does a couple of co-hosts on my shows, has the Ring doorbell camera, and she lives out in the woods, to where she has actually captured audio on these creatures that sounds like owls. But it's weird is that they're like, hoo, 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 and they start barking. And it's like they don't care. And it's interesting because when you put it on, I forgot what that little graph is when you monitor the frequencies. It is not in the human frequency zones. So it knocks that out for a man or a woman to recreate those sounds. I know that there's been times where people have said that their name has been called, so they know who you are. I know a few people, I'm not going to mention names on the air without their permission, that says yes. I feed them on a regular basis. When I don't feed them, they do come around and let me know. They're like, hey, they're not saying hey, but they show up and they're like, where's my food or my treats? So there's some investigators or in some Bigfoot groups in Florida. They use Reese's peanut butter cups. They leave out cat balls, and of course, we found out that they love these little objects, but they get really upset when they quit working and they return them. Also, when people gift items, whether it's trinkets, bells, small seashells, or whatnot, they also get items back in return gifted as well. So their intelligence level is very up there, and I don't understand that. So if you ask me today, what are Bigfoot or Sasquatch? I could not tell you, because I thought they were just primates and a part of the human species that just the government or the world does not want us to know, because that's going to rewrite history and so forth. But talking to these people, the Cherokee background and other indigenous people, they have a structure. They have a hierarchy. They do believe in a God. They do believe in evil. Their structure. Now, where I just moved from Lexington to northern Kentucky, I was closer to the Appalachian Trail. They called it hairy man or hairy beast, depends on where or what type. So I don't know. I mean, the topic is endless, but how do you classify something like this? We have so many people out there, and I always get that number one question, Grizzly. If it does exist, then why don't we have video and picture evidence of it? And that's what I was talking about earlier, Linda. We know for a fact somehow that they can manipulate electronics. So they can make your electronics fail, drain your batteries, make your pictures digitalized where it's digital and you cannot see. We had trail cameras where sticks are being waved in front of it. We have trail cameras where you see an eyeball. We have trail cameras that have been moved up a tree or ripped off a tree and it's been bitten and thrown. And these are locations to where people are not around. Now, are humans or people messing with trail cams? Absolutely. I'm not saying that everyone is related to Bigfoot. I'm not that one, right? I am a debunker. So people are going to have fun. People are going to play jokes. Oh, there's a trail cam. Watch this. I'm going to stand behind of it. But when you have trail cam pictures of an arm with long hair, 4 or 5 inches down from the arm, how can you explain that? Now we know from learning from the Indians and the different Cherokees and the different backgrounds, indigenous people, that they groom themselves. They're not all matted. They do cut their hair. Now, how is that possible? And this changed the realistics and the realm of everything to what we know and what we think of these creatures to a whole nother new level. So what are your thoughts on that, Linda?
My thought on the cutting of the hair is what devices do they use to do that? How do they accomplish that?
So some of them say they use clamshells, some of them says they use rocks, some of them say they use bones. So, I've never witnessed that, but there's a lot of people that I've encountered. They're like, Grizzly, their hair is beautiful, they're clean. We have reports that they rub flowers on themselves. I don't know if that's a natural thing to fragrance themselves to attract other mates, or is that something to keep bugs off them? I mean, I don't know. There's a whole lot of unanswered questions. It seems like the more people we investigate and interview and people that come forward, they're like, oh yeah, what do you want to know? And it's like, what do you mean? What do you want to know? They're like, yeah, well, this has been going on for years. And then we talk to people that's been attacked, by Sasquatch, by juveniles. Randy is a good one. I've got one law enforcement officer this Thursday. It's coming on one of my shows. That's stepping out of the shadows is like, look, I had to take a report. I was on scene to where this guy was literally attacked by a Sasquatch and was in the hospital. His fingers got bitten off and very graphic. And he is still in law enforcement and he's coming forward and wants to tell his story and tell people that, hey, these things do exist, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I know they exist because I've seen it. Now, are they paranormal? Are they flesh and blood? Are they from another reality? Now, like I said, I know they bleed. We have reports from people that actually allegedly has unfortunately killed a couple of these creatures in the past. And there's been repercussions from it, not only from the government, but from Indian tribes and clans. We had one person when he was a child had pictures and took the pictures to the school and did it for a show and tell. And the people in the community did an autopsy on it and saw that the Sasquatch allegedly had two hearts. Now, that was far fetched. And there's a lot of things that you and I hear. It makes you really want to step back and think, is this plausible? Is this possible? But, every time that I want to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm not going to cross this line, right? There are things out there that I know that walks upon this earth that should not exist. We know by men, we are told that. We know by scientists that we were told this. We also know in the book of Genesis, God has created creatures seen and unseen. So that leaves the gate open. I'm not trying to get, biblical or anything like that with it on the subject, but are they out there? Yes. Are people encountering things? Absolutely. Are there hoaxes? Absolutely. Have you ever seen one or encountered one before, Linda?
No, I haven't seen anything.
People ask me, they're like, Grizzly, with your law enforcement experience, does that help you? I think it does, and here's a couple of reasons why. Now, I have been trained with a lot of agencies with interrogations and interviewing. I like to call it interviewing instead of interrogation. It's just more softer, uh, more subtle approach instead of interrogation, right? And my daughters would tell you growing up, see that guy right there? That is my dad. If he asks you a question, do not lie, tell him the truth because he knows if you're lying or not. And I have interviewed probably over 18 or 1900 people in my lifetime, whether it's been in the law enforcement capacity or the civilian side. So, I'm very good with body language. I'm very good with micro expressions. I'm very good with handwriting analysis to where I can tell if somebody's telling me the truth. I can tell if somebody's using certain keywords, if they're being deceitful, dancing around the subject, right? So, I mean, it goes on and on. But when you hear the same story over and over from different people, you got to give it some validity at some point. Now, seeing these creatures, in person, in real life, changes the whole aspect of everything. Because a lot of people will tell you, they know what firearms are, they know what those are, they know when you enter the woods, so they know your intentions. So it's just like deer. Deer can sneak up on you. I used to be a big deer hunter. I used to be able to sit there and not even pay attention and look up, and there'd be a big buck standing in front of me or a big doe. And I'm like, how did you get there? So, and, they're like, well, how can something 8 or 10 feet tall, walk around the woods and not be seen or caught? Well, let's backtrack on that. So, Daniel Boone in Kentucky, right? Davy Crockett, it's been documented that he shot and killed one with his muzzle loader. So there are instances where these things and creatures have been killed with history, but also, how many times have you seen something step into a tree line and just totally disappear? So, they use their natural surroundings as camouflage as well. Now, if they can actually cloak like the videos that we've seen, and now we're seeing more videos on YouTube, people that are out there in the woods are like, what is that? And they're trying to catch it on video and they're chasing it. And they're like, it was just right there. And then I ran around the tree and it's gone. What was that? And you're like watching the video and you see some distortion. Is that creature cloaking? Is that creature messing with the electronics? I have no idea. We know that they can know the trail cams. They know they're present. We know that they can see the infrared, allegedly, from the trail cams. That's why they stay away from them. The motion lights and floodlights, they stay outside the range of those. So, their eyes probably pick up different spectrums that we are not able to see, ambient light and different spectrums on levels that we're not able to see as well. So I don't know. It's a very interesting topic. Mount St. Helens, when interrupted, there's allegedly been reports to where the government has recovered bodies. Witnesses came forward allegedly and saying They have seen them with helicopters and cargo nets, seen these creatures being flown away that were dead. The forest fires out Midwest, creatures where firefighters are like coming across, they're like, what is this? And they're trying to fix this creature because it's badly burnt. And next thing you know, the government's showing up out of nowhere saying, like, you were not here. We're taking this, get lost, and that's it. You never speak of this again. And so we do have these alleged encounters happening. Do the government have bodies? Absolutely. There's been also people on their deathbed confessions that have came forward and said, Grizzly, this is what happened to us. This is what we know. And there's been also other people that's come forward that said, I cannot be on the record, whether it's just being on audio only or change my voice, because I don't want to take a chance. Because not only do we have to sign non-disclosure agreements, but they also told us that, hey, if we speak of this, not only will I lose my retirement and my credibility, but this will also affect my children and their children. Now, what kind of threat is that? And I'm hearing a lot of these encounters over the past couple of years that are people that are worked with the government. Allegedly, we have spoken to people that work for the government that works 45 days on, 45 days off. And what they do is they go out and they hunt these cryptids, whether it's dog man, whether it's Bigfoot. They are dropped off certain spots in America and they're out to kill these things or creatures or beings or whatnot. We have laws on books in certain states that makes it capital murder, capital crime. If you shoot one of these Bigfoot or Sasquatches, you're going away for murder.
What states have those laws?
Rhode Island, Washington State, and forgive me, you're gonna have to Google that and fact check me.
Okay.
But there are states that actually have those laws on the books. And why do they have those laws on the books? I mean, they're acknowledging they exist, but they're not acknowledging they exist. Does that make sense? I mean, why are you
Yeah.
going to put a law out there and say, don't do this? And they're like, well, we don't want to do that, right? So we have a guy here in my area in local northern Kentucky, southern Indiana. We have called a Pope-like monster. And what a lot of people know that is a goat man. And the guy is very well known in the cryptid world. And he was visiting a friend. And this happened in the past 8 months. And he went over to a friend's house. And this guy is got a very good reputation. And he was like, I was over at a friend's house, and the neighbor's like, what? And he was like, what in the world? Slow down. What's going on? He was like, man, you ain't gonna believe what happened last night. They're like, what? He was like, man, this creature was out back and people heard it screaming, making noises. And this is in Louisville, Kentucky, a major city that goes around and goes to this trestle. And you can look it up, everybody. But make a long story short, this guy never goes anywhere without his equipment. When I say equipment, I'm talking even caster, where he can use plaster to make, and cast tracks. He came back with plaster tracks that he casted. And these tracks are something that I've never seen before. So he took him into the Department of Natural Resources, the DNR in Indiana. He's like, so what are these? And they're like, where'd you get those? He's like, I got them. So tell me what they are. And they couldn't answer it. So he went to Kentucky Fish and Wildlife. And they're like, oh, that's just an oversized cow. He's like, these are not cow hoof prints, ladies and gentlemen. He's like, try again, and they're trying to put labels on this. And back in the old days, Linda, around this area in the country, bootleggers would use cow hooves and strap them onto their shoes and walk across fields to smuggle their booze and liquor so they wouldn't get caught by the local authorities. So they were trying to say that. But What was weird is that when he took pictures of these prints, of these footprints, they were one after another in a line, and nothing else was around that area. And he was laying down a dollar, a $5 bill as he went along this creek bed. And these tracks were probably about 6.5 inches long. And it looked like an oversized goat track, but the spread of the toes were probably about that big or wider. So that is not a known animal anywhere, not a deer track, not a goat track, not a sheep, not anything. So he actually casted a lot of tracks because he was afraid going to Indiana and to Kentucky that they were going to confiscate his plaster or his tracks. So he kept some hidden, and they wanted them, but he wouldn't let them turn them over. So, that leads back to Bigfoot, Dogman, and elementals, right? So where do you draw the line? It seems like the more that you investigate, there's more questions that need to be answered.